you asked the question, what is the basis of America's comparative advantage strength? It's our technology, our high-tech sector. He's shooting ourselves in the foot.
Britain and the US have announced an agreement to cut tariffs. The deal covers cars, steel, beef and more. Let's reflect on that and also the state of the global economy. And I'm honoured to have in the studio the American economist Joseph Stiglitz, who is a Nobel Prize winner, a professor at Columbia University, and, of course, the former chairman of the President's Council of Economic Advisers when President Clinton was in office, as well as being the chief economist at the World Bank. His new book, The Road to Freedom, is out now in paperback, and he joins me now. Welcome to the show, Professor Stiglitz. How are you?
Great. Nice to be here.
I had no idea you were going to be in the studio.
Here I am.
So you're over here, and it's all happening over there with the trade deal. What can we get your reflections on what you've learnt about the US-UK much vaunted trade deal?
Well, it seems like the UK got the short end of the stick. It is consistent with Trump's strategy, divide and conquer, go after the little countries first, like UK, the big countries, China, GDP and purchasing power parity greater than the United States, holding out, imposing, punishing tariffs on the United States, showing that it's not going to give in, and of course EU somewhere in between.
So obviously you're not a fan of Trump's economic policy and the tariffs. It was interesting.
I don't think any economist is, so let me make it that clear.
And it's interesting, we spoke to a man called Douglas Carswell, who you may or may not have heard of. He was quite a prominent sort of political figure in the UK as part of our sort of populist movement, if I can put it that way. And he's now over at the Mississippi Center for Public Policy. And although he does not support Trump on tariffs, he was saying, and this goes to the heart of your book, which we'll talk about now, that in his view, Trump is doing a lot of good things. Cutting government spending, he says, is a very good thing. And there is this school of thought, I'm a conservative, that government spends too much and it's better if government spends less. That's not something you necessarily agree with.
That's right. In a modern economy, there is need for what we call collective action. There are things that we can do collectively together that we can't do individually. None of us could have, on our own, discovered the mRNA vaccine, developed the COVID-19 vaccine that enabled us to be here today discussing this rather than ravaged by that pathogen. We needed money if we're going to do that kind of basic research, and that basic research provides enormous benefit. In a 21st century economy, we're a knowledge economy. Underlying that knowledge economy is basic research. So you look, why does the United States have such, comparative advantage in technology? It's the internet. Who made the investment in the internet? It was the government. Now, I agree that there are some things that are a waste of money. You look at the private sector, there's waste of money there, and we have to constantly engage in scrutiny to make sure our money is spent better. But it's, sort of interesting to me, people always complain about wasted money, and then you start talking about what do they think about their schools. They say, well, my school is great. They're wasting money on other children's education. You ask them about our national parks. Great. I had a wonderful summer there. You ask them about FEMA, which is our program for disaster relief. Because, of course, when there's a disaster in North Carolina, it can't do it on its own. We have to all do it together. So you go at program after program, and you try to find those gray bureaucrats who are sitting in their offices and doing nothing, just pushing paper around. It's really hard. This has been a campaign going on for 50 years, and I think we've been somewhat successful in getting rid of that gray bureaucrat that doesn't do anything, and now we're down to a lot of stuff that is very valuable. Look at what that so-called Doge, the stormtroopers of Trump eliminated, USAID. Millions in Africa's lives are going to die because of the lack of that foreign aid. Even the Republicans, who, my friends, who said the greatest Republican program was PEPM, providing assistance for those with AIDS, young children, pregnancies, so that mothers don't pass on AIDS to their children. So, I don't want to pretend that government is spending every dollar well. You look at the private sector, not every dollar is spent well. But we get a lot of value for dollar.
Can I talk a bit about, there's an element, no one believes that any economy or any society should be unregulated. And indeed, we all support, for example, a strong competition regulator to keep business honest and to avoid monopolies or oligopolies. But is there an element of you sort of slightly tilting at windmills, that no one is presenting a society that is completely free of rules, but, as it were, the Conservatives, perhaps your opponents, in inverted commas, do believe that government should spend less, that the private sector often spends more effectively, or that people should be freer to spend their own money as they see fit, within a set of guidelines and rules?
Well, obviously, as you say, we have to have rules, not only the competition rules that you mentioned, but pollution, for instance. Global warming is an existential crisis, and companies will pollute if they're given free rein, and we have to have regulations. So you're absolutely right. We need regulations. The question really today is, what is the amount that is necessary for a 21st century economy to spend? And my judgment is that as we move into the 21st century, we're going to have to spend more. Why? We have to spend more publicly, collectively. First, we're moving into a knowledge economy, and the basis of a knowledge economy is basic research. That's what economists call a public good. It won't be provided by companies. They won't do the kind of research that discovers the DNA, discovers the mRNA platform. They can take that and then produce a particular product, but they weren't going to do that basic research. Secondly, we live in a more urban society where we interact more. Public infrastructure becomes more important. And so that's why we're going to have to spend more. Then the nature of a modern technology seems to be that it creates more inequality. Yeah. And more inequality leads to more divided society, and a more divided society, hard to work together.
Can I ask you about free trade and tariffs? There is a paradox here, isn't there? Because when you have free trade, most economists think free trade is a good thing, because I can suddenly buy steel at 1/10 of the price, and I'm a car manufacturer, so I make cars that are cheaper for my consumer here in the UK. Good thing. I also make the person making the steel in China richer. Good thing. Over the last 30 years, hundreds of millions have been taken out of poverty because of free trade. Unfortunately, my neighbour who works at the steel plant has lost his job, or her job, and she might well vote Reform, or in Trump's America, vote Trump. And people will be elected who say it's outrageous that you lost your job. It's the fault of the economists who told you this was the most efficient way to allocate goods. We're going to put up tariffs and we're going to bring these jobs back. How do you answer that, which for me lies at the heart of some of the populism that is risen in these days?
You're absolutely right, and I do blame the economists. And I blame them for one specific mistake. They thought that that job that was lost in making steel or cars would be automatically recreated in some other form, and the individual would costlessly move from one job to the next. He would go from making cars to being a computer programmer overnight. I thought that was foolish, and I argued against that. I said, we need assistance for people to move from the old jobs to the new jobs. And job training. We may actually have to help create new industries that in the places where the jobs are being destroyed. So it's also sensitive to the capabilities of the individuals, but also the nature of place, because people live in a particular place.
Exactly, and that is kind of at the heart of what people talk about, the kind of national identity and so on. But we could go on for hours, but I just very briefly want to ask you, as you're here, and we've only got a couple of minutes left. You're a professor at Columbia University. Another aspect of Trump's policies, a war on the universities. How are you? What's it like?
It's terrible.
I know what you think. I know what you'll say. You think of what Donald Trump
let me say
what is it like in reality?
In reality, there are two aspects that I want to emphasize. The first is, you ask the question, what is the basis of America's comparative advantage, strength? It's our technology, our high-tech sector. He's shooting ourselves in the foot. We won't have that advantage, that lead in the world, if you destroy our universities. That's where the basic research, it's where the applied research occurs. So he is destroying the strength of America. Secondly, academic freedom is, I believe, one of the pillars of our democracy. You know, we all understand the importance of free speech, free press, the role that the press plays in the media more generally, plays as part of the system of checks and balances to make sure that we don't wind up with an authoritarian figure and keep safeguards on our economic system. Academic freedom is another important aspect of that.
Absolutely.
There are groups of people, like academics, who are given the privilege in our society to think about how do we create a good society, who have the privilege of thinking about, is what the government is doing right or wrong? You know, most people are busy working their job. They don't have that luxury. But we've been appointed that responsibility in our society, and we have to have the freedom to do that.
Brilliant. Thank you.
And he's trying to destroy that.